Today I'm going to show you how to easily remove the background from a photo in Procreate. I wanted to show you how you could remove the background from a photo like this one. So let's say I wanted to use this image of myself as part of my cover photo for this tutorial. And maybe I want to put some of the words right here above where I'm pointing. But obviously I don't want all of this stuff in the background. I just took the photo in front of a bright window of my house, and so my TV happens to be in the background and the fireplace and all kinds of stuff I don't really want to include. So let me show you how we can easily remove the background on something like this. We'll use the selection tool set on automatic, and then we're just going to go in and tap on wide areas that you can easily select. Like my wall was all that same color, so I could tap there and then try to capture some other areas and just make sure that it's not cutting into the person's face or into the subject matter. You just want to be removing the background. So you might have to zoom in a little and you can see how it's cutting into my face there. So you could just go back and just select a little bit less. By adjusting your threshold by sliding left or right, you can choose how much you're going to remove. So when it comes to areas like this, it's better to err on the side of caution. You could always go in here with the freehand selection tool and do around like the person's hair or any like irregular edges. It's easier to do with the freehand selection tool, unless there's like high contrast, like this white made a nice contrast for me so that I can go in here and remove the area around my hand. But then when it gets closer to the same color as like my skin tone, it's really hard to remove. So I wouldn't go in with this automatic selection tool for areas like that. I would just do manually with an eraser or with the freehand selection tool. And so you can just go through and cut those areas out and then see how it looks. Another method I sometimes do, just a tip, is to duplicate this layer so you have your original. So I don't know if you could see in that one part where I was selecting, it's capturing like some of my earring. Well, what I could do is go back, duplicate this layer so I am not erasing on my original, turn off the duplicate and erase on this duplicated layer here. And then if there's a problem where it's erasing like a part of my earring like that, it's really easy to just go back in and like add it right back in from your original. So let's see if I can capture it. So see how that bit's missing? Maybe it doesn't really matter because it's like kind of like the shine, like the white. But let's say it took off like a whole chunk. So when you cut, you didn't notice, and now you have like part of your person's hair or their face or whatever is missing. Well, then you still have your original here that you can go back and you just select that little area on your original and you can add it back in. So I would use the freehand selection tool in that case and just tap along the border of like the problem area, which in this case is my earring, and then just select all of that. And then I would copy and paste. So this button right here, and now I have this bit here that I can kind of like repair the areas that are erased by mistake, and it's a little bit faster than having to be like so extra careful when you're doing your selections. If it looks good, you can clip it down and then keep your original as your backup so that if you need to do more areas like that where you have to repair them, you have it. Another thing I like to do is to make my background a different color so that I can see what I've already erased and what looks good and what I still need to work on. So if you go in here and you make your background color to black, it might work for you, but in my case, I have a black TV here that I'm working on and some other areas that I might not be able to tell if it actually erased well or not. So I'm going to pick like a really random color, like maybe this like peachy color or something, so it's really obvious what I've erased and what I haven't. And then I can go in and I can easily see if there's like little bits left behind, and I could grab my eraser tool and just like clean up those areas so there's no little specks left behind. You can also make really wide selections with the freehand tool for things like this. You don't need to go in there scrubbing around with your eraser. It's much easier just to use this freehand tool and just take out these big wide chunks and kind of crop in as close to your subject as you can before refining it a little bit more. So I'll just go through and select all these like big chunks that are able to be quickly and easily erased, and then go in with my freehand tool, like really cropped in tight, and my eraser tool, and clean it up further from there. Another thing you can do, if you can see here how this is a little bit jaggedy, if you use your selection tool and then press automatic, and then feather it. So what's going to happen is it's going to make a soft edge. If you adjust this slider up and down, you'll see how much it's going to feather. So say I want to select this area here and it's looking like really like pixelated here after I make my selection. So I could press feather and then just feather it like 1%, and it makes it a much softer edge. So let's see what that looks like. You could do even more. You can see that didn't really feather it all that much. So you can kind of play around with that to see what works for you. And it might not work for all selections, but it is helpful sometimes if it's making like a really pixelated hard edge that you can soften up a little bit with this tool. So you can see how that looks a little nicer. And then make sure you zoom out and make sure it looks natural. Hair is always a really tricky area to remove backgrounds from because it can look really odd if you take too much out or if your shape is funky. So what I like to do is take like less than, I think, and then you can go back in with this smudge tool, and you could always kind of like blur out the edges a tiny bit, or like just create like a few loose strands of hair back in so it doesn't look so harsh, like it's just being like cropped out and then it's like a weird shape. So that's one way to kind of soften the edges and make it look more natural rather than using the select tool and just leaving it as like a hard edge. Try one of those techniques. Like this is pretty close. It looks pretty good, but there's always going to be like little hairs and stuff sticking up. And like you could see this area of my bangs, it's going to need some help. So luckily I have my original saved here. So I'll piece back in like that area of my bangs, probably with this original layer here, to make it look like there's not like a big chunk taken out of my hair. Like I would never leave it like this. This looks terrible. And then if you go back in with your eraser tool and you're doing like this, it just looks weird also because no one's hair is that, like it's way too smooth. So the tricks I like to do are to use the feathering tool to soften the edges, use the smudge tool to add little strands back in, just here and there. You don't have to do like a whole lot. And also just keep that original layer. So if you have to repair any areas like this, anywhere it's cut into your subject's head or it looks kind of funny, you have your original hair that you can fix it up. Now of course, like I'm not going to include strands like this is way too much sticking up hair, but you could smooth it out a little bit without having it cut down into their like into their hairline so much. So just kind of play around with it, and you know you always have your original there just in case it goes too far and you lose too much or you smear it or whatever. You can always revert to your original here. Okay, so now I have this picture I can use on one of my covers. If I had planned ahead a little bit better, then I wouldn't have this area of my shoulder cut off. It's because I was holding the phone out to take it from the selfie camera. But if I had set up a tripod or something like that, then I would have had a nicer curve here on my shoulder. But all I'll do is use this like scooched over to the side like that so that it doesn't really matter. So I want to make sure I export it as a PNG so it has a transparent background. You could also crop it in a little bit tighter so you don't have a lot of excess here. If you go to canvas and then like crop and resize, then you can just easily crop it in close to your subject. And if you go down below it, like see how it's below my shirt, it'll just have a little extra background there. So that looks cropped in pretty tight. I'll push done and it'll crop my canvas so I have this image of myself I can use for whatever. And then I'll export this as a PNG so it has a transparent background. Go to the Actions menu, Share, PNG, and I'll just export it to my camera roll. So now I'll have this to use in Canva. You can also use the background remover tool if you have Canva Pro. It's honestly a lot faster than this, what we just did here. But if you don't have an option like that, or you don't have any other software and you really want to do it in Procreate, that is exactly the method that I would do. If I needed to remove the background from a photo of a person or something with like a really busy background in this app. I hope this tutorial was fun for you and you learned something new today. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at MyMcDoodles and come say hi and tag me if you use this technique so I can see what you've created. Don't forget to subscribe before you go so you don't miss out on the next fun tutorial. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.